Welcome to the Culture is Healing podcast, brought to you by Checking In. At Checking In, we create customized wellness apps for First Nations communities, guided by relationship, trust, and community knowledge. We're also grateful to share our Pathways to Healing tool, which supports frontline and support staff in helping community members access healing houses more quickly and with care. To learn more about our work, please visit www.checkingin.co. Thank you for being here and for spending time with us. I hope you enjoy the episode. Aichka. Aitchquel siemna siaya antapa huokuletsa anit stamenes halalt kawatsan laaksan. Hello, everyone. My traditional name is Huokuletsa. My English name is George Harris Jr., and I'm calling today from my home here in Staminas. This is the community that my father is from. This is the community that my mother married into. And this is the community that my siblings and I were raised in. I belong to George Harris Sr. and my late mother, Sylvia Harris. And my grandparents from my father's side of my family are the late Lawrence and Irene Harris. And my grandparents from my mother's side of my family are the late Bernard and Nora George. My familial connections to Halalt come from my mother, Sylvia, and my grandmother, Nora. And my connections to Kowatsan come from my grandfather, Bernard. Through both sides of my family, I have familial connections to Layaxan. And the name Hokolitsa, it's a name that's been passed down for many generations throughout my family. And I have the honor and privilege of being able to carry that name along with my father, as well as a few other family members. And once again, my name is Huokuletsa, and I am the host of the Culture is Healing podcast. And today I have the honor and privilege of being able to share this space with my friend Tanille. And I'd love to open the floor for her to be able to introduce herself to you all. Aichka. Tanille?
Yeah, Gilakes la Nugwa la Kologwa, Gaiakan la Sakwalutin. My Gleekliklola is the Dick family. We're from Cape Mudge. It's a village on Quadra Island. I'm calling in today, though, from Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh territory. So grateful to be able to call in today on lands that I haven't officially been invited. So I'm treading lightly as I visit, but super grateful to be on with you today. And yeah, so I'm from the Dick family. My grandfather, everyone knows him as Tiny. I don't think anyone knows what his real name is, which is common in our communities. And my great grandparents are Fred and Emma Dick, and Emma is from the Roberts family. So that family line is also how we're connected into the Weewacum First Nation, and I'm from the Weewakay First Nation. Both communities are members of the Likwistau people, which loosely translates to speaks Likwala.
Aichka, yeah. Yeah, thank you so much. I always love when we have that opportunity to share who we are and where we come from, and that's very, very foundational in our Indigenous communities, and I always love being able to share that. So, Aichka. And as we're shared in previous conversations, getting the opportunity to share a little bit about our work. The name of our podcast is called Culture is Healing. This is something that means so much to so many people in our communities and beyond. And when I have that opportunity to say culture is healing, what does that saying mean to you, Tanille?
I mean, it means a lot. I think culture is everything, really. And when we talk about healing, culture is often something that we go back to try to calm ourselves down and connect. A big part of wellness is belonging, and our culture is all about belonging. I remember, so growing up really young, I didn't connect with my like native identity really at all. It wasn't something that was prominent in my family in my younger years. My house was off reserve, about 15-minute drive from my reserve. I knew where my grandparents lived, but I didn't go to the same school that most of my cousins went to. I was very separate from that part of my family. And I remember the first time I started to kind of look into who I was and my lineage and my genealogy. And I remember entering into social work school at the University of Victoria while I was doing some of this, and learned about the meaning behind a frog. So our people are completely intertwined with our natural world and our animals alike. And I remember I found out that the frog was a communicator in our culture, and it made so much sense to me. I've loved frogs my whole life. And I was entering into a profession of social work, which ultimately requires excessive communication. And
Mm,
so I was just like, I got goosebumps. I was like, wow. I was like, this is just making so much sense. And so the more I learned, the more I felt like kind of really comfortable and confirmed, like in my own skin,
mm,
which has just been an unreal experience. And I do continue to learn to this day different things about our community and who we were hundreds and hundreds of years ago, and what our community looks like today, and kind of how that's definitely built into our blood. Like it's inescapable, but it just offers such a confirmation, our culture. So yeah.
mm. Oh, I love that. Yeah, I love hearing you say that too, because like um, a few years back, so previously before my role and my walk here at checking in, I was a designated band rep for my nation, and so I had the opportunity to walk alongside the delegated agency in my area, and it was gosh, it was kind of that transition time in between like spring and summer, and so it was getting pretty warm, and so I had my office door open, and I stepped out of my office for a few minutes and came back, and there was a little frog in my office on my floor, and I was like, "Oh!" And I heard it before I saw it actually, and so I was just like, "Oh, that's kind of neat." And so I was like, "Well, buddy, it's time for you to go back outside again. I got to get some work done." And so like made its way outside, and my sister was walking, had to be coming through, and at the time she was the chief of our nation, and so I was just like sharing with her about this frog visiting me, and she goes, "Oh, that's very fitting that the frog would come and see you." And she's like, "You're in your role, you're very vocal in your advocacy for our people in this child welfare system." And she goes, "And your task as the leader of this department is you know to be that voice for our people, and to and she's like, and mentioned one like, if you take a look at that frog, it doesn't ever look backwards. It doesn't have the ability to. So you have to keep the frog has to keep moving forward, and if it does want to look back, it has to make that turn to look, and then it has to maneuver again." And she's like, "So your primary role is to, be vocal and keep moving our community forward in this work." And so I was very fortunate to be able to, have my sister there to share that story and that teaching with me about my visitor that day. And so thank you for sharing your story, because it reminded me of my own experience. So, hi, Chika.
It's amazing how it just makes you feel like you're in the right place at the right time, right?
Well, very much
It's just
so.
like nothing else. You just finally feel like, okay, good. Someone has, given me a checkbox that I'm on the right path right now. I'm here. I'm where I'm meant to be in this current moment. Like it's, yeah, something else.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, and in that week too, for me, it was particularly a fairly hard week. I had quite a few um, disclosures that come in and that were very difficult for me to hear and to see. And so then hearing and seeing this frog was it was a beautiful thing, especially to look back upon now too and reflect on that time. So yeah. Yeah, and it always brings, so many teachings, our elders and our relatives, um, and looking at, some of our ceremonies and some of our, um, healing spaces, throughout our years. Um, we always have those opportunities to attend. Has there been any ceremony or cultural event that you've had the opportunity to partake in or witness that hold a special place in your heart?
Yeah, definitely. One on like a smaller level, I guess. Well, I shouldn't say smaller, but the very first time that I ever smudged, so the very first time that I ever brushed off, was unreal. I was in my early 20s. So, again, like, I started my learning journey quite late for a lot of reasons. And so the first time that I ever brushed off, um, was crazy. I remember kind of finishing pulling the sage smoke kind of over my body, and I put my hands down by my sides because I was done, and it felt like gloves just like fell off my hands. It was such a I'm getting like sweaty palms thinking about it. It was crazy. It was so
Mhm.
crazy. And I was like, wow, I've had a lot of baggage that
Mm,
I've had to get rid of. And it just, yeah, it felt like it slipped right off both my hands. It was such an unreal feeling. And then another one on a bit of a larger scale was my eldest daughter's Heath Laguila. So our Heath Laguila is our 10 moon ceremony. So culturally in our community, we often wait 10 moons before we name our babies.
mm,
And scientifically, it aligns with infant mortality rates. So waiting for that connection, for that spirit to choose that it's going to stay in the human world or go back to the spirit world. We're big believers that when you stay in the human realm, there's a purpose, there's a reason for that. And
mm,
you'll stay as long as that reason is necessary. And then once you've fulfilled that obligation, you'll go on your next journey and re enter that spirit world and go on to whatever your next path is. And so we had Collins's Heath Laguila, and it was so cool. I mean, a lot of work, definitely
mhm,
going into that celebration. It is really just a party, essentially, in our big house, saying we're so
mhm,
happy that you've decided to stay in our family. And there's a couple of different ceremonies that happen. And she was lucky enough to get gifted a name at that ceremony, which doesn't happen all the time. It's common, but it's not really a part of the ceremony per se. Um, and when they called out her name for the first time, we have this amazing picture of her just like throwing up her hands into the air. So
mhm,
they announced her name, and she just like put her hands way up in the air and looked up and was just like, yes, basically.
mm,
And she's tiny, right? She's just, they're really young at this age. So to have her kind of do that celebration right in that moment,
mm,
when she was being gifted a name. And then I was so grateful that there was a photographer there to get a picture of it because it was just so perfect. And so she was given the name Wolfganega, which loosely translates to the one that we've been waiting for. So really cool, and it is kind of also a common baby name that kiddos are given, but it was cool that she ended up receiving that name as her baby name, because my whole life I always envisioned myself having a girl. My whole life, forever and ever and ever, was always like, I'm going to have this daughter, and like we're going to take over the world and make everything beautiful. And
mm,
and so for me, she absolutely has always been the one that I've been waiting for. So for her to get given that name was just like, again, like, the when culture is connecting with like who you've been your whole life and you're just discovering some of those pieces now, it is unbelievably confirming, of just who you are and your being and your spirits. Yeah, it was really, really cool. Amazing experience. And now she's huge. Now she's She's 7 going on
Mm.
8, and keeps bugging me because she needs a bigger button blanket because hers is too short now. It just looks silly on her. So we need to get her, we need to make her a bigger button blanket so that next time she dances, it fits properly.
Mm. Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. Oh, that's so amazing, and I'm glad that you had that opportunity for that to be captured, and you get to hold on to that. Not only that memory in your heart and in your head, but you have an actual like picture you can look back onto. That's so cool. Yeah, and I think for me, go on like a recency bias. Yeah, I had the opportunity to attend a coming of age ceremony, and it was really powerful. It had the opportunity to be there to support family and opportunity to be a part of have my small part in the ceremony and yeah, and I think it's always amazing just hearing some of the like the background stories to how our communities function. And one of the things that does often happen is our young people, when they're going into that coming of age ceremony, it's often common practice, and specifically in my family, we um, go for baths quite frequently leading up to the event. It's usually 4 days where baths happen, and I know I was sharing, with my family, in particular, this young person shared that when I had the opportunity to go through my coming of age, it was it was really intense process. We went through 4 days of bathing up in the mountains, and normally I thought that was going to be it, and then went through 4 days of bathing in the river, and specifically in Halalt, where my mother is from. And so not only did I have that opportunity to bath up in the mountains where our people find a great deal of healing, I had that opportunity to bath in the same rivers that my mom's family did. And I finished off my bathing um, down in Thakmin, like down right in front of my house. That's where I'm from is Indigenous, but the specific spot I live in is called Thakmin. That's where my father and my grandparents are from, and so I had these amazing opportunities to bath in different waters that I belong to. And one of the funnier things that actually happened was in that first set of baths. We were up in the mountains, and it's cold, and we had to break water to get in. And on the second day, so it was me, my dad, and my brother-in-law Chris, and um, I was walking. I was the first one to go in, and so being the younger guy, I was the one to. We had to break the ice to get into the water, and so I threw the rock, broke the ice, and getting everything ready. And as I was walking in, I got about knee deep, and I ended up falling, and it was I was fine. I didn't get hurt or anything, but because I was already like knee deep, it was fairly cold too, and I fell, and I went almost all the way in. Like I And my brother-in-law, he's a funny character. He's got a lot of humor, and can hear him laughing the loudest, and my dad's laughing too. And then my brother-in-law, being the Chris that I grew up with, he yells down to me. He goes, that doesn't count. That doesn't count. You still have to do your 4 dunks. And I was just like, shut up, Chris. Like, so I did my 4 dunks, and I got out of there, and I was just like, oh man. I was like, that's, now looking back, like I can look back at those stories and laugh at them and look back at them fondly too. That my father and my brother-in-law, helped set me up for a cultural life, and setting me off into my growing adulthood in a good way. And so it's kind of something that I had been thinking about and reflecting on since this weekend. So yeah, thank you for sharing your story, and thank you for allowing me to share mine as well. Yeah, and as we're thinking about our teachings and our ceremonies that we've had the opportunity to partake in and witness, undoubtedly, we've all had those opportunities for teachings to be shared with us. And so I wanted to ask you, Tanille, what are some of those teachings that have been passed on to you that really help guide you in your walk today?
Yeah, I think some of the biggest ones would be around the four corners of our big house. So I've been taught that those corner posts are respect and integrity, truth, honesty, as like our four big pillars of how we do our work and how we carry ourselves. And that's something that's stuck with me for forever since I was offered that. And it was Alec Nelson that offered
Mm,
that to me, who has connection into the Musqueam Zawadino community, which is also a very, very special place in Kinkum Inlet.
mhm,
And since he taught me about those four pillars and what they meant, like I've tried to take it everywhere with me, even into academics. So when I was
mm,
writing my thesis for my master's, um, I used what I called the RIGHT methodology, and the acronym was the RIHT, um, because I wanted to make sure that during that kind of research endeavor, that I was still doing that work from those places and from within our big house, and like our most sacred place where we do all of our work, but also like where our governments live as well, right? It's one place, one place for it all. So that's been really big for me. One thing that was really something else, and I ask every time someone engages in making something. So whether you're making a drum, or you're making moccasins, or you're making earrings, or a cedar mat, or whatever it is that you're making, I ask the folks that are teaching, like, what are the protocols around when we're done? What happens with our creations? Because I remember the first time that I ever made a drum, and it was in Coast Salish territory. And I can't remember exactly who our teacher was because it was quite some time now. But uh, after you were done making your drum, they said, okay, now the protocol is that you have to gift it. You have to give away the
mhm,
first drum that you make. And I was like, what? I was like, no way. Because you're so proud, right? You're so
mm,
proud. You made this accomplishment, and you want to hold on to it, right? It's sacred to you. It means something to you.
mhm,
And so I was floored. I was like, okay, well, I guess that's got to happen. And so I had it for a little while, and because I was trying to decide who I was going to gift this thing to, because I wanted that to be just as intentional as it was making the drum, right? And so I ended
mhm,
up giving it to someone who I definitely identify as a sister, and um, offered her that, and the teaching that came along with it, saying, like, this isn't the first drum that I've ever made, and the teaching is that you must gift it, and I want to give it to you because, like, you're important to me, and I trust you with it, and yeah, so it was a really cool experience
mm,
to receive the shock when you were told that you had to give it away, but then everything that came afterwards of, like, humbling yourself,
mm,
and then choosing who you were going to give it to, and then also seeing their gratitude on the other side of that, because they know it's hard, right? They know it's
mhm,
hard to give something like that away. So it's a question I ask all the time, like, if whether we're making like a little medicine bag or what have you, it's like, okay,
mm,
do I get to keep this, or is this like are we giving it away? I'm like, because my teachings are that you give it. Like, if it's the first time you ever made something, then you give it away. So yeah, that's definitely something that sticks with me all the time. For sure, it was a wild experience, but something that I'm definitely grateful for.
yeah. Haichka for sharing. Yeah, and I know that's a teaching that think about frequently. Even just this past weekend. I remember so I was working with a young guy this weekend, and I was just making sure that, asking him, is this your first time doing this work? And he goes, oh no, this is my second time. I'm like, okay, good. I was like, just wanted to make sure, because if this is your first time doing this work, like you have to give all of this away, like the tela, the money you get paid, the blanket that you get placed upon you, the kerchief that you get. If this is your first work, you have to give it away. He goes, okay, no, yeah, I've done this before. I'm like, okay, just carrying on the teachings and traditions of our elders and our people. And so, yeah, thank you for sharing your story. And yeah, I definitely, I hear you on that one. I remember, a few years back, my stateless and I, we both worked, at our neighboring nation here in the Snuneymuxw in their school. And for one of the team building exercises, we did that. We made drums, and I was waiting to hear and to see, when our elder was going to mention that we had to give it away, because I was kind of just waiting in the background to see what everyone's faces were going to be when that was said. And so, yeah, my wife, she was a little shocked and was like, "Don't worry about it." It's like, you and I will trade drums. That way it could at least stay in our home. And so, yeah, the elder allowed that to happen, and so we still have our drums here. She got to keep the one that I made, and I got to keep the one that she made. So it was a very, very nice exchange. Yeah, it was kind of funny to watch that. Being I knew the traditions, and I would have been on the entertained side of seeing people like yourself getting that shock factor of that. Yeah, and so, yeah, and speaking of, those teachings, and sharing the ones that you've been taught, I'd like to ask you now, Tanille, if there's any words of advice, any teachings that you'd like to share with the audience of our Cultures Healing podcast.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say so the world around us has kind of put this pressure on that you're supposed to be good at everything. You're supposed to be, phenomenal at anything that you do and everything that you do. You're supposed to have the big job and drive the fancy car and own the big house and be the best parent in the world and, know all of the things. And um, I think sometimes we bear the burden of thinking that we have to be all those things in culture too. We have to be, the person that knows all of the plant medicines. We have to be the person that knows our language and can speak fluently. We have to be the person that knows every dance and knows everybody's family history and can make the best regalia. Um, and that's just not true. We're all given our own gifts, and owning those gifts is what's important. Trying to relieve yourself of the burden of thinking that you have to be the best artist, you have to be the best singer, you have to be, the best dancer. That's not fair. That's not fair, and that's not what our people have taught us. Um, our people have taught us that we are given gifts, and that it's those gifts that there's the community expectation that you hold dearly and that you do well with, and it's not being the best at everything, and letting that go can be really, really hard. I know for sure that, like, I tried to do so many things. It's like, okay, I can, make drums and I can make earrings and I can, put the buttons on the button blanket and draw the artwork to cut out to then put, the animal on the regalia, and it was just too much, right? It's too
Mhm.
much. So um yeah, just don't feel the burden of having to be everything, because it's not the way of our people, and it also doesn't support other people to shine. So because we are all given our own gifts, our own areas of specialty, it's supportive to allow people to shine in their own way and to not then feel like you have to be just as good at that person at that thing, because that's not the way of our people. That's not the way of our culture by any means. But it can be really hard to let go of that. So I hope folks can just hear this almost as like permission, like, don't
Mm-hmm.
do it. Like, find your little niche and be awesome in that, and that is going to have great value for the years to come for our people, and be a mentor in that space. Share your gifts with people, because that's what also keeps our culture alive and well and thriving, is when we share it to the best of our ability and within our protocols with others. So yeah, that's probably a big thing, a learning curve that I have to think about all the time too. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what is my gift? What am I here for? And really honing in on that and being okay with not being great at all of the other pieces. There's other people, and they can step into their greatness in those areas, and I can support them.
Mm. Yeah, Haichka. Yeah, giving permission for human beings to be human beings. I love that. Yeah, and I think too. I've had those same struggles. Where Western society has this expectation of like perfection, and being Indigenous, it feels very counterintuitive to. And this is where that two-eyed seeing approach comes into play, especially for people who have that cultural understanding, having to coexist in the Western world. So yeah, I really, really appreciate your words of wisdom, Tanille. Thank you so much for sharing that teaching with me and our audience here. And also, giving that opportunity to share one's strength. And I'd love to open the floor to you, Tanille, to share about the work that you have going on in your life, and I'd love to open the floor for you to be able to share that with our audience here. Hachka.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I have a little bit going on right now in a couple
Just a little
different
bit.
arenas. Um, I mean, I guess one part of my life is that I've really loved working with First Nations Health Authority. I've been working in the arena of healthcare now for about 9 years, and it's really been amazing to be a part of an organization that's really trying to drive home healthcare transformation for our people in our province. It's been really, really cool to be in that space and doing that work. And then the other thing that I've been pursuing lately is politics, um, and on a couple different levels. So in 2022, I ran for the first time municipally and was elected as the First Nation city councillor in the city of Kamloops River, which is my home territory. So extra special for me, and that's been quite the experience. I do have elected experience from student politics. There goes my hearing, my headphone. When I was in university, when I was back on that learning journey, I actually dove into politics head first. I started at the Native Student Union and went into their elections and walked out the advocacy liaison for the Native Student Union as a council position, and kind of didn't look back. So municipal was the next step once I was home. And that's been a learning experience. It's something else being an Indigenous person showing up in politics, especially from a social work perspective. Like, I just see the world from a different lens than a lot of other folks,
Mm-hmm.
especially with the other counselors being pretty conservative leaning that I'm around that table with. Just a really interesting dynamic of folks to navigate. And then I ran federally for the NDP, for the New Democratic Party, and the last federal election in 2025. And again, like, another eye-opening experience. It was such a privilege to be in that position, though, and have that opportunity to travel around a large part of my traditional territory,
Mm.
and be able to meet our people where they're at, and also increase the Indigenous voter turnout like crazy. So we ran 2 campaigns before that, both provincially and federally, in my neck of the woods up in North Island, Powell River, to make sure that all of our nations, and we have 22 First Nations in the north end of the island, to make sure that all of our nations had ballot boxes in their
Mm.
communities. which there were some nations that had never had a ballot box before in their community ever. And so we made that happen. And it was amazing to see our people engage more with that voting process, especially because the federal government really has a big influence in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really, really special. And to be a part of that work was fantastic. And then now, latest and greatest, I put my name forward for the federal leadership race for the NDP. So this is a race to bring in our next Jagmeet Singh. So Jagmeet retired, stepped down from leadership, and now we're running a leadership race to fill that spot for our party. So it's been quite an amazing journey. It's absolutely, had its own challenges as someone coming kind of from the middle of nowhere on the opposite side of the country as Ottawa, from a rural
Mm.
riding that no one knows. It's been a climb for sure, but it's been incredible to be able to travel the country and go to other rural communities and have conversations with folks and talk about, what the future of politics needs to be in order to make some really big changes in Canada for everybody, not just for Indigenous people, but for all Canadians. And along that process, we've also uh, kind of made our mark in Canadian political history because we're officially the first Indigenous candidate to be on a federal leadership ballot. So, never before has there ever been an Indigenous person that ran for leadership of a federal party and made it on the ballot. We have had other Indigenous people run before, but they've dropped out before getting on the ballot or haven't made it on the ballot. So, um, fantastic, like we're smashing glass ceilings. And I mean, I love doing that stuff. You do the
Mm-hmm.
impossible, right? So that you can pave the way for folks to finally see themselves in these gigs and hopefully inspire people to start taking up more space. Because we absolutely have a role in federal politics, and we need more Indigenous people to show up in these spaces to make sure that the government is paying attention. We're often not seen as respective governments in the country, and it's hampering our ability to have a prosperous Canada for everybody. And so I really want to make some changes in that space. So yeah, it's been an honor to be in this race. We have another couple leadership debates coming up really quick here, and so those will be fun. I love hearing people's perspectives. I love walking into challenges and breaking them down and sorting them out and kind of moving forward better together. And
Mm-hmm.
this is really an amazing opportunity for me. So I'm super grateful to just be able to do it.
Mm. Hachka. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing and wish you nothing but the best in that endeavor that you're taking on now and one for representing who you are and where you come from, but also it's also encouraging for a lot of our people to have one of our own be there in that space and to be there to not only just advocate for us, but advocating for everyone for a better tomorrow. So Haichka, my hands raised to you for the work you're doing, in your day job as well as the the leadership role you are looking to obtain. And so thank you for your time today, and thank you for those listeners who continue to come back to the Culture Healing podcast. And I hope to catch you all in the next episode. Aichka Tanille. Take care, everyone.
Kayla.
Aichka he ewer.